chapter 7. You want to flip in your Bibles or your phones. Deuteronomy chapter 7. I know that the booklet had a long list of verses this week to read. The topic was faith, and that's why I got it written up here at the top of the board, the whiteboard here, with a question mark. I feel like it is sometimes such a tough word to define. So I put it with a question mark at the beginning. But at the bottom down here, I put it with an exclamation point. So I hope that by the end of the conversation, we get to maybe a little bit more clarity on what the word faith, not just how it's defined, but what it's trying to encompass. Yeah, let's go with that. All right. So the question tonight is, what is faith? Deuteronomy chapter 7. This is hard because we're all spread out. I feel like sometimes when we read, we can't hear each other, or it's not going to be recorded. I don't know. Chapter 7, verse 1. Everybody there? When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of, and clears away many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mightier than yourselves. That's what got me stuck. The whole Torah portion this week was 7 through 9. It took us through other places. We all got into the New Testament. We got into Hebrews, of course, chapter 11. What in the world is faith? And I think it can be defined in this one verse, which was the very first verse I read for faith this week. So let's try to figure this out. Look with me in verse 17. Let's try this. Can we try to read? I don't know. Let's try to read. Somebody read for us all, please, real loud, verse 17 and 18 of chapter 7. That's a Chris Conley thing. Go ahead.
I do that? Okay. If you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I, how can I dispossess them? You shall not be afraid of them, but you shall remember that what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all of Egypt.
You shall remember. Thank you. You shall remember. So go ahead. I'm going to go ahead this week and use a chance. There's going to be 3 pictures, actually 4 pictures up here on the wall, by the way. And they can be paintings. I hope that they are painting a picture of what this verse is talking about, and I'll clarify that in a second. So the word right here is remember. Let's write it up here. Remember. Matt asked a question last week. He asked all of us, are you going to go home this week and are you going to use something tactile that you can touch or feel and look at to remember so that you don't forget? It's a reminder. Do you guys recall this? You guys remember this? Okay. Chapter 6, verse 10. When the Lord brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, Isaac, Abraham, Jacob, blah, blah, great and good cities you did not build, houses full of things you did not fill, cisterns you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees you did not plant, when you eat and are full, take care lest you forget. So Matt asked us, what are you going to use this week to remind you? Something, again, that you could touch, feel, look at, that you don't forget. Was anybody successful this week at that? All right. A couple of years ago, I remember trying to put a Bible verse on an index card and put it on my dashboard. That way I didn't see my speedometer, okay? And I got a different car than I used to drive, and so when I tried it this week, first of all, it fell down in the crack, and it's hard to get out, actually, but it fell down and it covered up my gas gauge. So I'm kind of a mess. Driving a different car, different dashboard, it was a mess. So anyway, fail number 1. Then I noticed that on our girls' bedroom, they've got a paper box that they made, and they taped it to their door frame. And it's a tiny little homemade version of, how do you say it? Mezuzah, okay? I didn't make one, they made one. I noticed that when I walked down the hallway, these things are tiny. They barely stick off the wall as much as the door frame. And I swear I always bump into them when I'm turning the corner or when I'm standing there talking to them, whatever. You don't do that? Oh man, I don't know why. Anyway, So anyway, I feel like that was fail number 2 when I thought about, am I doing what Matt asked? So I struck out twice. Nobody's got anything? Nobody? Killing me. The phrase is, lest you forget. I think we're going to forget. Okay, let me read this verse again from chapter 6, verse 10. When the Lord your God brings you into the land, same as chapter 7, verse 1. When he brings you into the land, that he swore to your fathers, I'm in verse 10 again, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you with great and good cities that you did not build, houses full of all good things that you did not fill, cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. When you eat and are full, take care, lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. I got stuck on this idea of remembering and not forgetting. And a couple days ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, I was looking on my phone, and my girls were looking at pictures. And it's fun to look back because they were pictures like 8 years ago and 10 years ago when they were a lot smaller. And I came across this picture up here. Can everybody see it? No? Can anybody guess what that is? What did you say, Kale?
It looks like Brandon Morgan.
No, I said, is that your attic?
That is not my attic, but it's kind of a good guess because it looks like a really weird place to be. Conley knows that situation, and he does know who that is. What did you guys say on that side?
Is it a plumbing problem?
It is a plumbing problem with Brandon Morgan.
It's totally, he's in the home. I don't see a person.
Wow, this is interesting. So this is the floor, cement. There's dirt and sand everywhere. This is the end of a crowbar and a shovel kind of tools laying out of the way. This is a work light. Those are metal studs. The white pipe goes out the front of the building. It's literally pretty much maybe where that red table is, straight out towards the front of the building. And that is Brandon Morgan's back, and those are his shoulders, even with the concrete slab of the floor up there. I put that picture up there because a handful of you in here know who Brandon is, and a handful of you, actually the majority of the people in here don't. Never met him. Brandon and his wife and their kids, they were a part of this church, this body, this community, this rebuilding of the parish. And some people say you're in waist deep. That dude's in shoulder deep, connecting the drain line so that the daycare poo goes out of the building. Right, very ooh. That's plumbers for you. The point of me putting this up here is that there are people that a lot of you have never met before who have been here, who helped put this place together, and that you've never met. And so you and I, we are enjoying something, parts of this. I'm not trying to take credit away from many of you who have served here, but I wanted to have an example of someone who is here and is gone. The Bill and the Lindas who just served and did so many things here and helped. Let me give you a different example that's maybe not as personal to you guys. A couple weeks ago, we got to go to South Carolina, and I got to go to some classes for work, for being a chaplain, okay? And I don't know if you can realize this, but in law enforcement, they often, a lot of different people, often recognize people that have fallen, officers that have fallen in the line of duty, okay? So we had this whole service one afternoon. You go in, you sit down, and they put up on the screen, by state, every 50 state is represented there, including other countries. So they put up officers from every state that have died. And that was very impactful. You know, you sit there and you just think, oh, this sucks. You know, you're sitting there watching. And there was a family that I could see from where I was sitting up in the front row that was from South Carolina. Their family member had died, and they were there to represent him, and they had invited them as guests of honor. And I'm sitting there watching these names on the screen, and Louisiana troopers and all these officers are going up there, and I'm just sitting there like, it was emotional. They stopped the names when they finished all the other countries, and the back doors opened on the banquet hall we were in, and 2 canines, big old German shepherds, walked up both aisles to the main center stage, went up, and all the officer, the handler said was, hup, just this, barely made a noise, and the dog sat down. I mean, it was professional as can be. And then they put up on the screen all the canine officers that had died the last year. It was incredible. And I'm not like all about dogs and cats and all that kind of stuff, but it was professional and it was impactful. So I go from, wow, that was emotional, to this. The name's finished. The officer said, whoop. The dog stood up, down the steps, down the aisle, and out. It was clean and impressive. And then up on the board, they put up the names of all the older chaplains who had died. I didn't know a single one of them. But what I realized sitting there was, I wouldn't be sitting here if those men and women had not done this before I ever got here. They started the organization. They came up and taught these classes. They came and they decided, let's band together across the maybe 2 states at that point, 3 states. Now this organization is in, 10 or 15 other countries besides the United States and represented in all 50 states. It was impactful to sit there and think about the people that have gone before me and that have gone on and white hair and died and passed on. But they did something that I'm now enjoying, literally in that moment. I might have been the last one in there. I might have boohooed a little bit, but it was powerful and it was impactful. And so I asked the question to you. Matt suggested last week, can you have something tactile? Well, I'm begging you, don't forget. Don't forget the people that have done something or have served and built something and have come before you and have served in ways that you may never know what it cost them in blood, sweat, and tears, money to do something in their faith before they ever thought you would come after them. I think a big portion of our faith is remembering what God has done or who He has provided before us. And it takes, maybe it reminds us of humility to have that. Verse 26. Somebody read 7:26, please. Jake?
And you shall not be an abominable thing into your house and become devoted to destruction. Like it. You shall utterly detest and abhor it, for it is devoted to destruction.
Yep, thanks. Devoted to destruction is a phrase that's in there twice. You shall not bring an abominable thing into your house and become devoted to destruction like it. You shall utterly detest and abhor it. It is devoted to destruction. This is kind of an awkward sentence, and I wanted to know more about it. I didn't understand what the word abominable. I just thought of the snowman. I didn't know what that meant. So here it is scribbled out. And this isn't perfect, and I'm no expert on Hebrew, but here it is. Harem shakas. It's an SH sound. Shakas. The word is there twice. Ta'ab, harem. Okay? You notice a pattern? It's
Palindrome.
Yes, palindrome. Explain what that is.
Same backwards and forwards.
It's the same backwards and forwards. Everybody heard that? It's almost like that. It's kind of like the word mom. Get it? Or what's the other one? Pop.
Race car.
Race car. Taco cat. Stop and think about it for a second, okay? Taco cat. You get it, Rustin? Race car. It's the same forward and backward, okay? This is actually a piece of poetry when it comes down to it. And Matt and I got on the phone about this, and we kind of referenced Skip last week, which, by the way, if you didn't come to that, man, Skip was talking about all kinds of stuff in Hebrew language, and it was incredible. And I can't even touch his knowledge, but I wanted to at least write the Hebrew words up here to say, look, this is an awkward sentence in English because it's an incredible sentence in Hebrew. It's trying to paint a picture of how bad this stuff is and what it actually meant. Well, I want to write it. It was utterly, it's the same word here in Hebrew, but it means in English, utterly abhor and utterly detest. So like in my Bible, it only says it once. It only says the word utterly, but it's repeated twice in order to paint the picture, it's not just detest something. It's not just hate this. It's not just abhor this. We don't use those words very often anyway in English, abhor. We don't say that kind of thing. But it says it twice in there. Don't just hate it, abhor it. No, utterly hate it. Utterly detest it. I don't know about you, but that's getting a little bit intense, you know? So now, flip or look back at the beginning of the verse. That's all right. 5, verse 5. Jake, read that real loud. 7:5.
But thus shall you deal with them. You shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and chop down their asherim and burn their carved images with fire. 7:5.
That's it. Thank you. Deal with them. You shall break down the altars, dash in pieces pillars, chop down the Asherim poles, burn their carved images. These are the instructions being given. Put that other picture up there, please. These are the instructions being given about how you're supposed to move into this land. You're going to go take over these other people groups, area, towns, cities, all that stuff, cisterns and wells. You're going to go in and take this over. This is what I want you to do with every single piece and object that they have. Destroy it. Don't just destroy it because you think that's your opinion. Destroy it because that's the purpose I have for it now. God is saying they're devoted to destruction. Those things have been set apart and pushed away, and they're gross. How gross? You should actually hate it. You shouldn't just hate it. You should hate it. You should utterly abhor it, utterly detest it. This got me thinking because of the phrase in here. It's not the same word. I'm not trying to do this, and I promise, Matt, I wouldn't say and lead you astray Hebrew-wise. Our big word here, our big phrase is kadosh, right? What does that mean? Remember? Huh? To be set apart, right. And I actually tried to find a picture. This is very popular, by the way, right now online, and Everly showed me a picture of a t-shirt you can buy now that says set apart, okay? And it's a verse later on, but we use this verse all the time in here. Hold on a second. Where's the verse 6? Why is he saying all this? Verse 6, you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession. So we are told over and over and over again in Scripture, Old Testament and New Testament, you are a treasured possession. You are to be set apart. You are to be holy for a specific purpose, kadosh. You are special. The people are told this over and over. It's presumptuous to say that, but we believe it. We try to live it. What does living it look like? It means you are to absolutely hate some things. And this is one of the verses that stood out to me right away because I was thinking, when I was a kid, the phrase was, don't smoke, drink, cuss, or chew, or go with girls that do. Everybody ever heard that? Aaron has. Thank you, Midwesterner. Okay. Huh? Oh, man. Should I repeat it, or should you guys just have a family moment later? Okay. Yeah, right. Right. There were these rules that we had when we were kids, or we were trying to figure out what does it mean to follow God? What does that look like? And so we were told, like, don't do this, and you need to go to church, and don't do this. And so now as an adult, it's funny because now I think of things like, man, Aaron, you need to read, and you need to come spend time with people. And you need to be compassionate. You need to be generous. And then Skip smacked us last week. He said, people say they want to be like Jesus. Do you know what be like Jesus meant? And it's easy. Oh, yeah, he was compassionate, and he was non-judgmental, and he was generous. No. I mean, yes, but that's a half-truth. He was rejected. He was hated. He was alienated. He was whipped, attacked, wrongly accused, crucified. So Skip's reminding us, you say you want to be Christ-like? There's a much bigger package to that statement than I want to try to walk and love people. That's a rough road to hoe. It's a rough cross to bear, that kind of thing. So what does it look like just to do the good things? No, there's also a negative side to this. And it is, there is something in each of us, there are many things in each of our lives that we come across, and I think the instructions are utterly abhor and utterly detest them. I was thinking about this before obviously thinking about this verse and studying it and wanting to know, what does that look like for us? I have no idea what example to give. But there's a verse in Scripture, right, that says to flee from some of these things. Fleeing, 180, teshuva, turn in the opposite direction and get the Murph out of there? How do you get away from something that you absolutely hate, detest, abhor? The problem is sometimes we don't exactly hate them, but we need to hate them. They're just really attractive to us. I don't say this to be ugly tonight. I don't say it to be awkward. I say it because maybe you need an encouragement tonight to just keep going and keep trying to get away from something. And I'm saying utterly hate it. Remind yourself, utterly detest it. And maybe tell somebody else, this is what I hate. This is what I'm trying to get the heck away from. And I need to repeat it and I need to say it out loud. Because to be set apart from these things is to be set apart and to act like God's treasured possession. Verse 22. Somebody read 7:22, please. Yep.
The Lord your God will clear away these nations before you little by little. You may not make an end of them at once, lest the wild beasts grow too numerous for you.
Thank you. The Lord your God will clear away the nations before you. How will he do it? Little by little. You may not make an end of them at once. Verse 5, I think. Sorry. Oh, some other translations. Does anybody, in verse 22, does the second part of it use the word quickly? Anybody? The second part of the verse, does anybody have the word quickly? No? Okay, I wasn't sure. Huh? Yeah, it is? Read it for us.
The Lord your God will drive out those nations ahead of you little by little. You will not clear them away all at once. Otherwise, the wild animals will multiply too quickly for you.
Those will, okay, yeah. Let me flip to this other version. Here you go. This is interesting. This is the first time I've ever done this. I was at my desk this week and I was using a different version, the Tactical Edition Bible, okay? So, God's word for peace officers, okay? Little by little, he will force these nations out of your way. You won't be able to wipe them out quickly. You won't be able to wipe them out quickly. This kind of blew me away because sometimes we talk about how big God is and how powerful God is. How fast is this going to happen? Doesn't sound like very fast. Sometimes when we get an idea or a notion, right, and we put something on our to-do list, how quickly do we want it to happen? Sometimes we want it to happen quick. We want to get it over with. But Walt, you've pointed out many times, how long did it take the people? How long did they wander in the wilderness? 40 years. What? To go how far? 11 miles? 7 miles? 11-day trip took 40 years, right. And I thought of that, going back to the picture of Brandon up there. This building took, 5 years, I think, before the daycare was built or before the permit was done for this or something like that. It's ridiculous how long some things take. But what does this verse say? This process, this moving process, this takeover process, is it going to be overnight? No. Are you and I going to find perfection in our lives overnight? No. Is it a journey? Is it a process? What does that look like in your life or in mine to say little by little, not quickly? I wanted this picture up because I was trying to think about, everybody read that? I was trying to think about how do you paint this picture? What does it look like to be little by little? I went to the hospital this week over here, and this sign was in the elevator. There was a lot of signs in the elevator about space and mass and all this nonsense, and I read this. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, about all this stuff. And then I read this, and I thought, man, this is the most positive thing I've heard all day. Be mindful of the energy that you bring into this space and around other people. Your words matter. Your behavior matters. You, our patients, and our teams matter. Take a slow, deep breath. Make sure you're entering this space with a thoughtful and positive energy. Okay, you could take that to feel a little bit extreme, but you could also say, Mr. meditator, like, this is powerful. When you go to an elevator, which is a stressful place, or it's awkward how close you are to people, or you're going into a hospital where you might be stressed out about the appointment you're going to, clearly there are a lot of families that are very stressed about some hospital things going on right now, and this is the reminder you're given. Chill out, take a deep breath, center yourself, and realize the way that you exhale affects other people. It clearly affects you, but it also rubs off on other people. Man, for a simple sign, I thought that was powerful. And if I read this and I think little by little, that means I can build up other people one word at a time. I can tear down other people one word at a time. Every situation, taming of the tongue, like it says in James, you can destroy a whole situation just by one thing that you say or one moment where you lose your cool, or you can overcome and you can win one battle at a time, little by little. I actually thought it was interesting that Briar wasn't here this week. Most of you guys know Briar did not live here this summer. He lived at a camp, and these guys back here, and these guys, and this guy, and that guy have all been to this camp, and that lady, that guy. So anyway, half the room in here has been up to Discovery, and you have experienced the woods and all that love that comes with that. And you can ask Rustin about how great it is later, because there's some awesome moments. I should have put that picture of you rock climbing up here. I forgot about that.
I got you.
Briar's summer was different this year than last year. There was 2 interns last year when he went up there. This year there was 7, I think. Full house. Needed extra housing. Awesome. We're going to have a great year, a great summer staff. COVID concerns at the beginning of this summer were less than they were last year. We got some great groups. This is going to be a great summer. The oldest guy on staff calls in on the last week and says, "I'm sick, come get me." And he dies the next week from COVID complications. And I wrote them an email because I couldn't go to the funeral. I wrote them an email and I described this guy. This is the guy that he went to a very small Bible college. He didn't go to Harvard. He had a very small youth ministry at a very small church. He didn't go to some big fancy thing and to get a promotion and get this and that and that. He did a couple years and he moved to the woods to be a part of this camp. And he did it for over 30 years. Taking canoe trips, taking backpacking trips. I mean, it was a reminder to me of little by little. It is not the destination. This is another quote from last weekend. Skip was telling us, reminding us. It is not about the destination and about fancy, impressive results. It is about the journey, little by little. So often, I know this, and it's hard for me to get up here and talk about this. So often as Christians, right, as believers or followers of God, we want to talk about the future and what God has promised us. And doggone it, every time somebody dies, we want to talk about the future and what God has promised with us. You know what? I'm not there. I haven't seen it. I'm not convinced because I'm so logical that I want to see evidence today. And you know what evidence today is? When someone is a joy, and when someone understands, and when someone slows down and listens, and when someone understands your temper, and when someone is calm and selective and self-controlled with their words that they use. And Ronnie at Discovery had a laugh and a handshake and a heart for God. Little by little. Just love God and take one day at a time and pursue opportunities that are given and be an example of Him. What is this? Maybe it's the daily, little by little. This doesn't have to be quick. Just be faithful. Little by little. It will not happen quickly. Let's go back and finish this up. Chapter 7, verse 1. When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of, and He clears away the nations before you. Wait. We've been told over and over and over again that God is going to deliver the people into this land, right? It's a promise and it's a beautiful thing, but it's confusing. And if you don't think it's confusing, read some of this, where the people ask, where are we going? Why are we not there yet? Why didn't you bring food and pack some food for the journey? Where's the water? Where's the beautiful land? Why don't we go back to Egypt? You follow me? We've talked about this over and again in here, right? Okay. So when the Lord brings you into this land that He's promised you that you're entering, and He clears away the nations before you. This is where I had a problem. This is why this verse caught me. I wrote it in my Bible. How is this fair, God? They had lived there for generations. I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about why did these 7 people groups get kicked out of their home? Maybe the last picture will help paint this better. All right. Can everybody tell what that is? That's a roof of a carport, and that's Mr. Lindley getting up there with a hammer. So weeks ago, Lindley said, man, I really got to get out my fascia and my soffit right here in the gutter on this carport. And so he was pricing it, met with a couple gutter guys, figuring out how do we get this wood changed out, how do we put some new metal up there, or vinyl, what is it going to be, aluminum. And he had torn a bunch of it down, bought the new material, and we were sitting there today trying to figure this out. The funny thing about this is, if you watched us today, and I think Russ, and you'll probably appreciate this the most in here, because you know how a construction project is supposed to work. You know that there's a problem, and you know what the supply houses and lumber yards carry, and you know the best way to do it, and you know it's going to last the longest in Louisiana, so you tear it down, you demo it, you price it out, you install it, end of story, right? And you get paid. We are not professional fascia soffit rebuilders. So we were out there today hammering and bending and trying to flatten stuff and messing with it, and it was a couple hours, I don't know. And I thought, if any professional came by here, they would laugh at us. Rustin would say, what are you guys doing? This does not make sense. It doesn't add up. This is not the right way to do it. How much did you spend on this? All those kinds of thoughts. It seems like it is always a lot easier to look at someone else's situation and for everything to make sense of you, to be able to point the finger and help them explain, or help to explain to them what they're doing wrong. And I say that because we got it finished, and we both, over and over, as we made progress, little by little, we said, this is going to work. And Lindley said, I'm happy with it. It's weather tight. It's going to provide protection for the wood that's underneath it. We're good to go. But it had to make sense with the process and the resources that we had today. And I say that to you guys because when you look at this verse, when I looked at this verse, I actually was mad. I actually thought to myself, why are there such unfair things in the Bible? Why do these 7 groups who are larger and more stronger, populous, more populated than Israel? The number of people compared to the people of Israel, there was more already there in the land. Why did they have to get kicked out? Why couldn't they stay? Finders keepers, or this was my seat, get out of here, that kind of stuff. Why did they have to get kicked out? It always makes more sense when you're on the outside looking in and saying, well, that was Israel and God promised it to them. It always would have made more sense if someone could have come over today and said, y'all are doing it wrong, you need to go hire a professional and get it over with. But instead, when you can slow down and take the time in your own situation, little by little, one step at a time, one nail at a time, one cut at a time, one resource, one step, one decision at a time, and get through your situation, it doesn't matter what a professional or what some professional Christian would come in and say to you. If you're in the moment and you're struggling and you're trying to make a decision and you're trying to figure life out and you're trying to just take one step, maybe one half a step forward in progress or in courage or in fearlessness, it doesn't matter what anybody else said. It doesn't matter if someone's already been through it. It doesn't matter if a person's put up thousands of feet of fascia and soffit. It doesn't matter at that point. They could say everything they want to say in the world, right? People joke about this with parenting. You can tell your kids all you want. A professional could have told Lindley today all he wanted. But at the end of the day, he had to finish it. And at the end of the day, a kid has to learn a lesson and touch a light socket, right? That's just the way it goes. That's life. And they might get yelled at in the process, or they might waste some money or frustrate themselves or cut their hand in the process. I had to say this because it doesn't make sense sometimes. And I didn't know if I was going to tell the story, and I apologize if this is insensitive. Several people asked me today what happened on Center Street. Like 4 houses down Center Street yesterday. There was a lot of police cars, and there was yellow tape, and that's never a good thing. And I say this with all the respect and all the compassion on this family, and so I don't say it to be insensitive or to share their business. But the couple that lived there both had COVID. And he was in the ICU and not doing well, and she got discharged and was allowed to go home. Her family came the next day to get some paperwork and to say hi, and they broke a window to get in. She was not alive. And I'm just saying, it looks like by all appearances that she committed suicide. When life does not make sense, when you're asking what is going on here, and a family, we talk a lot about vaccines and masks. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about when a family has a loved one in ICU and they're saying, is this person even going to survive? Better yet, why is he in ICU and I'm going home? I don't want to leave my husband, but I can't stay in the hospital physically as far as I'm getting discharged, but I can't stay and be at his bedside. I'm getting kicked out of this. I can't be next to my husband. This poor lady comes home and situation didn't have an end or didn't have hope, and that was the end. And I went there and I thought, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? COVID sucks. I was speechless. And then I don't wish this on anybody. I don't wish for you to go there. I didn't want to be there, but I didn't know what to say. And this is ironic. The one thing there was to do, because we use the phrase, do you want to go into someone's life and help them and pick up the broken pieces? I grabbed a broom and I swept up the broken glass that was all over the steps because the detectives had come in and out, and the coroner had come in and out, and we're all just standing there on the patio and it's blistering hot, and I'm like, they had loved ones showing up. What do you do? Shut up and grab a broom. And I couldn't find a dustpan, so I left some piles of glass in there. But at the same time, I thought, maybe when you can't say anything, or when you can't hire somebody or whatever, you just, I don't know if we did any good today. I think we did. Just put some nails in, or just sweep up the glass in someone's life and be there for them. Is that a very fancy explanation to this? No, but what else are you going to do when there's no other answer to give? It was God's instructions, and it was for those 7 groups to leave. And the only thing I kept wrestling with in my own head was, and this is a stretch, but this was where I started to make sense of it. When it doesn't make sense, just look for the clues. There were 7 groups that had to leave. 7, completion, perfection, wholeness, I don't know. Maybe it was a picture that God's plan was the perfect plan. And maybe it had less to do with these 7 groups and more to do with the journey that the people of Israel were on, coming back or leaving Egypt and coming back to this land. I don't know. Parts of Israel still don't make sense today, and there's been fighting ever since then. Does it make sense? No. I looked up all these people groups. I was trying to figure out what the history on them was. There's actually some thought that say it accurately, that the Hivites, they're mentioned in the Septuagint, that the phrase is tent dwellers, wood gatherers, but it also suggests that they ended up being slaves and helped Solomon build his temple and situation. That they became laborers and they were wood gatherers. There's a suggestion that the Canaanites were actually tied to the Jebusites and they were later on basically married up together. Jebusites was an ancient word for the dwellers of Jerusalem when Jerusalem was actually pronounced Jebus, and they were basically in Jerusalem, which is the place, right? Not just the country, but the location of Israel. So the The accusation is they were there first. They were already there. They occupied Jerusalem, the most holy and desired place. The Perizzites were a rural people that actually fought later on into the period of the Judges. That same verse appears later in Joshua. I couldn't get my mind around this fact that they were told basically go in and destroy not just one thing, but if you read up to verse 5, everything. Destroy every single thing about these people. And I got to thinking, if it's repeated later and there's thought that these people survived and went on, interesting. Israel, the people, did not execute the plan. That's a bad word choice. They did not carry out the plan 100% because the people still survived. So what is faith? Is the God of the past still God of the present? Is the God of this book still God of 2021? And then better yet, or obviously, is the God of 2021 for you still God of Sunday and then Monday morning? Is the God of this book just the God of history, where this is a chronological story, just a historical document, or does this book describe the God of eternity? And I scribbled these down because I don't know the answer to them, and maybe the answer changes inside your heart on a day-to-day basis because we go through ups and downs. We go through really, really terrible situations. So what is faith? I wrote the word why because, sorry, I skipped back. Verse 1, the who and the why. What is faith? Verse 17, remembering. Verse 26, a purity and a devotion. Verse 17, remembering. Sorry, I couldn't see. Verse 26, a purity and a devotion, to hate and to get away from the things that He doesn't want us to be around. In verse 22, little by little, it's our behavior. It's easy to quote that verse in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. And I'm not knocking this because it's easy to quote and it's powerful. What is faith? Faith is the I forgot to remember. Do you guys know it? Say it again. The substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. You believe that's right? Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the belief of things hoped for the conviction of things not seen. If you look that up, if you looked up the word faith in the New Testament, because this whole week I've been thinking about emunah, the Hebrew word for faith. If you look up in the New Testament, Hebrews chapter 11, the definition of faith is a conviction of belief in God and salvation through Christ. Number 2, it is a religious belief of Christians. Okay, I want to agree with both of those, but what the heck does that mean on a daily basis? Third definition, a fidelity of character of one who can be relied on. Kind of a choppy definition, but I think number 3 is where I'm at right now. The first one, a conviction of belief in God and salvation through Christ. The second one, religious belief of Christians. The third, fidelity of character of one who can be relied on. I certainly hope and pray the first 2 are true for me and for us in this room. But number 3, I think number 3 comes back to this board right here. When we really don't know how to define faith, what is it? and we go back to what we were trying to paint a picture in Deuteronomy. What is faith? Emunah is all about action. So you don't forget where you came from, like you're riding a rowboat. Number 2, you act like it. And you're devoted, because if you're going to be set apart to God, you're going to be set apart from something else. And you get the heck away from whatever in your life you need to purge. And number 3, you have the patience to rely on God's power, not your own, little by little, even when it doesn't make sense. Maybe at the end of it, it looks more like an exclamation point than it does a question mark. I appreciated the song choice tonight, Kristen, because the last 2 that we sang up here, the second to last was about faith. Give us faith to trust what you say. And then the last song that we sang was about God's character. It is certainly about Him and His resume of what He's already done than it is about us. But I absolutely hope and pray for myself and for us that He will give us the faith to do what He says, even when it doesn't make sense. Let's pray, and then Matt's going to come up here. Father, thank you for your word. Sometimes I don't get why some chapters make more sense and why we get stuck on certain verses. So Deuteronomy 7:1, it didn't make sense that those people had to get kicked out. But thank you for the reminder this week for me to step back, to be patient, and to look at you, and to try to just to shut my mouth and to worship you through your word. And as I heard Shauna say today and pray, thank you that your word cleanses this earth. Thank you that you purify us through your word. Like Matt prayed earlier, we pray that over every square inch of this globe, specifically Afghanistan right now, and in every household. There's pain, whether it's COVID or something else. People struggle. May they also know what emunah looks like and feels like to follow you. Absolutely praise and worship your perfect and holy name. Amen.